Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I had the pleasure of recently connecting with across social media lines. She is a health and wellness coach, a speaker, she's a wife, but most importantly, she's a woman of God, and she's taking out time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring, uplifting others, especially when it comes to dealing with the challenges in life as we all face in some fashion or form. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our very special guest this evening, Miss Shun Foreman. Shun, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's always an honor to really just find somebody out there that can hear your story and actually want to share it. So I'm so grateful that you've given me the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, with that said, before we get started with our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Tell our audience a little bit of who is Shun Foreman.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So my name is Shun Foreman, and I am from Tyler, Texas. Very proud Tylerite. I grew up with two brothers and a mom and dad in the home, and just really just grateful. Had a lot of chances to play sports and had a lot of good friends back home. It's been great. Now I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse now for 20. This is my 26th year in nursing. So I've done a little bit of everything in nursing. I started out doing labor and delivery, and then moved over to critical care, and now I'm doing a little bit more administrative work. So I really like to say that I kind of grew up with compassion in my hands, and at least it was very clear to me that you're supposed to give back, because my mama was always around in the community, visiting what I call the sick and shut in. If you remember when we had those back in the day. And
Yes,
so my
ma'am.
mom did a lot of that, and I was just with her all the time. And I think some of that rubbed off on me.
Well, that's awesome. That is awesome. And again, it just also right out the gate is giving us a taste of as to the path that you followed career wise, and I don't believe that those things are by accident or by mistake. So appreciate you sharing that. So with that said, I do of course I do want to build upon that. So I'm gonna jump right in because anytime I bring my guests on the show and we're talking about sharing your journey, sharing your stories, one of the things that I like to take a few moments to focus on is where it all starts.
Mm,
Because I do believe that there are individuals that we encounter in life, there's experiences that we have in life as far back as our childhood that it doesn't necessarily connect or click at the time because, again, we're just kids, we're just doing life, doing our thing. But as we get older, as we gain more experiences in life, and as we start to truly figure out why am I here and what is my purpose, you start, without even realizing, you start thinking back to some of those moments, and all of a sudden, the light bulb comes on as to this is why I went through what I went through. This is the reason why I met this person or I had this encounter that I had, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. So, with that said, I'd like to again build up on what you already started talking about by focusing in on the beginnings of your journey. And if you would, take us back to the early days, Tyler, Texas, you growing up as a
yes.
kid. Kind of share with us in a little bit more detail. What was it exactly like growing up? Fond memories that come to mind for you, as well as if there's any particular challenges that come to mind, you can share that as well. Kind of give us a more broader backdrop of where your story begins.
Yeah. So for me, is pretty. I like to say I kind of dealt in two different worlds, two different spaces, because being the youngest one, and I had two older brothers. There's this tomboy side of me, and then the other part of me was just really clear on learning how to play alone. Because you couldn't do everything that the boys were doing, but it was clear that, and it was also clear that I had to be able to um, just play by myself. So the tomboy side of me, I mean, when I say tomboy, I'm talking about, shoes off, running in the street, jump, popping willies with the boys. I'm doing it all, climbing over fences, climbing trees, having a great time. The other part of me has always been really just aware of my surroundings, And I really just believe that if I could go back into like those days, to those days, for me, I really thought I was going to be a teacher. I I would always teach my baby dolls, and I would take those little baby dolls and line them up, on the walls, and I would get little pieces of paper and make tests for them. And when I go back and I think too about me just being the younger one, but also being the one who always went with my mom on the weekends, I really was kind of feeling like we were taking field trips. Like we were always at a nursing home, at a funeral home, or a hospital, or either someone's home. But generally speaking, we were always around people who were sick and needed support. And it it it's it's clear to me now, especially now that I'm talking to you, that what I learned during those times was I was learning nonverbal skills. A grunt might mean pain. You know, if they were really sick, they might point to what they need. They may not tell you, you know, get the spit can, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so there were different times like that to where I feel like it's clear to me that I was learning to observe people, but also learning how to help. And I think those two worlds kind of collided one day, me loving teaching, right? I'd love to teach. I mean, like literally, I remember the day that one of my baby dolls got sick in class. That's my imagination, right? She got sick in class. And I was just like, okay, you can stay after class and I'll keep you after class. But my next step was to go and get a Ziploc bag, filled it up with water. I had a needle and thread. I pinned that to the Ziploc bag, but then I put the little needle into my doll's arm. And I do remember the day when my mom walked in and she saw me. And, moms can say anything, but my mom didn't say anything. Like she did not say a word to me. She did notice that I was doing something that maybe was a little weird. But I think when she walked away, her silence gave me permission to continue to do what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
which was merging that world of teaching, but then also merging the world of what I had seen in hospitals. I knew that they had this thing. I didn't know it was called an IV, but I think that was my first IV. So in my brain, when I think back, I've always been an educator and a nurse, just
Mm-hmm.
because I could draw back on those days. And then there's also the tough side of me. When you got two older brothers, you better learn how to be tough. And especially if you're going to do some of the things that they're going to do. You're going to ride those bikes, you're going to take some scars, and you're going to be able to take some of those licks that come with being around brothers. So I think I had a really balanced perspective on life. Um, and it was good for me. I do remember sometimes asking my daddy, like, well, if you're letting them do it, why don't you let me do it? He's like, you're a girl, that's why. And so I also feel like there was that small little thread of me back then that was also picking the system and saying, this is not equal, that's not fair. If you're gonna let them do it, I should be able to do it too. So I kind of always feel like I had that part of me as well. So I think that's what Tyler was about, was really, good home cooked food, and just just a lot of love, a lot of support. We had great teachers, have great friends, and just a good hometown. Great.
That is awesome. That is awesome. As you were telling your story, at least the beginning parts of it, one of the first things I immediately focused in on was and I don't know if you paid attention to it, was the title of our show for this evening, Learning the Connection. And
Mm,
so hearing you share, and you're like, you emphasize, I was learning, and then there was this colliding, there was this bridging the gap, there was this, it's speaking to this. It's like especially when you shared about, mom is taking me to these different places and it felt like a field trip. And, you
Sure.
know, and here you are visiting nursing homes, funeral homes, but it was always the settings that you kept on going into always seemed to blend in with connecting with people who needed somebody to come alongside them. Whether it was directly health related, maybe it was just simply for company or compassion's sake to give them a hug or whatever. Um, and as a result of you having those experiences that your mom was sharing with you, again, being a kid and not necessarily making the connection at the time, I look at it as God was divinely setting it up for
Mm,
you to be observant of people, for you to pay attention, as you say, to be visual and pay attention to the signs, and understanding that signs are not going to always be through just spoken words or the obvious. Noticing just the slightest things like a grunt here or a frown there or a pointing of some sorts. Again, these are little details that
mm,
if if as a kid you were having this conversation, or if you, even as an adult, if you're just sitting around just randomly just talking about these things, it may not make sense. But in the context of your story, as you started it off, it makes perfect sense why this was all happening, because something that you took as just kind of being a thing that I did with my mom was the stepping stones to what ultimately was your purpose, was to ultimately connect with people in a different way, in terms of not only career wise from a nursing perspective, but then it was even deeper than that, because if anybody's had an opportunity to check you out, or hopefully they will check you out by the time this episode is over, and they see how you've taken even that skill set and branched it off into a whole wellness component, to where you're directly pouring into people, trying to share knowledge and insight, because you're a natural educator, you're a natural teacher.
mm,
It's more than just I have the book smarts. I have a passion and compassion for people and wanting to see them do well.
that's right.
In this respect, do well in terms of their health and overall wellness.
That's right.
And so I don't believe those things were by accident. I don't think that they were by chance. I believe that it's a direct divine assignment that in the
Mm,
earlier years you didn't get it in the earlier years, but it wasn't supposed to be for you to get in the earlier years. It was a learning process to make the connection, and then here you are today, being able to share some of that with us on this podcast, but in real life, day to day, being able to reach people all over basically all over the world, people that you know personally, but as well probably more people that you've never seen before, never met before, but yet they're drawn to you, and they're not drawn to you by accident. You are assigned. They are assigned to you to be drawn to you. So I think that that's very powerful. And again, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's the little things like that that are really big things. Like
mm,
they're really a big deal. So appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate that.
mm,
So, Sean, as you know, again, you had an awesome, what appears to be an awesome childhood, great family dynamic, etc. And as we get older and get into those adult years, we still have opportunities to gain those good experiences and make those great connections and things like that. But if you live long enough, there are going to come moments in time where every now and then a life storm is going to come your way, and sometimes those life storms can be light and mellow. Other times they can hit you like a ton of bricks, to the point to where you might find yourself in situations at times where you don't see a way out of this. That all of my brains, my brain smarts, my education, my connections, my way of navigating through challenging times, things that usually work for me when I'm finding myself facing challenging moments. Every now and then you get that storm, that barrier that you're just like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't see a way out. I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling hopeless. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make a way out of this. Um, of course, by the grace of God, you're here today. So it lets me know that regardless of some of those challenges that you may have encountered in life, He saw fit for you to find a way to navigate through that. So, with that said, if you would, tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that you were facing a situation that seemed insurmountable, seemed like it wasn't something you were going to be able to overcome or break through. But again, by the grace of God, you're here today to be able to share that testimony with us. Kind of walk us through what was that experience like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that situation.
that's so strange. You have helped me to put so many things together. So, I mean, just that one part before this. So, and now that you're asking me something there, I will say that there was there was a time when I was dealing with my own personal health issues, and I didn't really know how to fix them. I mean, I was at that point about 55 pounds from up from what I am right now. But I was also, I think whenever we're dealing with issues, we we typically try to fix other things too, and it's not just like I never turned it on myself and said it's me that I've got to fix. I thought other things were broken and I needed to try to fix them too. So during this time that I'm challenged with my health, I do recall that it was also around the time when Trayvon Martin was murdered. And I had actually made two attempts to go back to school before, and those attempts just didn't work out. So um, I remember listening to the Joe Madison show. I don't know if you remember that show, but
Hmm.
I used to listen to it religiously in the mornings. And one of the questions that he continuously asked was like, "What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?" And I just, for some reason or other, I kept thinking like there's not really much I can do to help, people other than use my nursing lens. And I'm not the person who's going to be able to go out on the streets and protest, but there was a program at SMU that was a liberal studies program that was human rights and social justice. And I decided to go back and do that because what I figured from trying to go through that program was that it would meet a couple of my needs. One is if I'm going to take the time away from my family to study, then it needs to be therapeutic in a way.
Hmm.
And I need to be able to enjoy it and it feel that's you. But the other thing too is if I'm going to take this time away from nursing, then I need to be able to add my perspective as a Black woman, as a nurse, also as somebody who is struggling with their health. And so I had plenty of background knowledge, and also family knowledge to see that kind of like what we see in the streets also can kind of happen in the hospital. Black and brown folks, we're struggling with our health, economics, with school and all of those things. So getting that human rights and social justice degree kind of helped me to reflect, but also to learn how have we done, how do we get through civil rights? How do we get through slavery? All of those things, different aspects of life and the globe. So I looked at the Holocaust as well. So it helped me to see the good part in humanity and the bad part in humanity. But all the time I'm thinking, I know at the end of this program, I'm going to do a paper on diabetes in Black people. I knew that. I knew it within my heart. I knew it within my soul because I really felt like I knew enough people in my family who were struggling with diabetes. And one specific person was my grandmother who passed away. And I was just like, I need to be able to answer this. But when I got to that point, it was like, really, there's no paper that needs to be written about African Americans and diabetes. They had all already been written. And then I got to a book by Dr. Joy DeGruy that's called Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And what she did was she encouraged you to take whatever problem you've got. So, for example, she uses the example of alcoholism. Look at that problem. If you've got that problem, see if your parents had it. If your parents had it, see if their parents had it. But if you can, take that issue all the way back to slavery. So while I was looking at diabetes in this situation, I couldn't really look at diabetes, but what I could do was call out sugar.
Hmm.
So at that point, I was able to chase sugar all the way back to slavery. I get to this point to where I'm like, I enjoy field trips. Remember, field trips. So there was a lot going on in Sugarland, Texas, and I was able to go and talk to a local historian who is now deceased, but His name was Reginald Moore down in Sugarland, Texas. But he was really the one who was kind of holding this history about Sugarland, Texas, and how convict leasing had been a big part of Texas history, but also very much kept out of the history books. And so I was like, I want to go, and I talked to him over the phone a couple of times, and I think I actually probably got on his nerves and to the point to where he was just like, if you want to come down here, I'll show you things and I'll teach you things. And so I went to see him, and he took me around. We went around Sugarland, Texas. He showed me where the old Imperial Sugar Refinery was. We went to the old Imperial Cemetery where some of those who were in convict leasing were laid to rest. And it was there in the at the cemetery where we were talking, and he said that he had done a lot of work in looking at sugar in convict leasing. But he said the work that I was doing, which was looking at sugar and health, he had not been able to make those two connections. And he said, continue to do the work. He said, your work is powerful. Continue to do the work. And at that time, I didn't know. But what I did know was that it was such a heavy feeling of loving education, trying to be a good student in my classes, but then I'm like, why is it that I've never heard of Sugarland, Texas in this way? Like, why has nobody brought up the fact that this convict leasing and this is it was just mind blowing. So it was then when I made like a pivot and I changed my behavior with sugar, because I was just like, this is I'm kind of pissed off of sugar. If you be honest, I was really just pissed off because I was just like, this is a problem. If this history is here and nobody's taught me. So that kind of led me to another field trip to tour some plantations down near New Orleans, and that really just magnified the problem with sugar and the narratives, our narratives that have mostly been kept out, and it just really prompted my behavior to change with sugar. So you know I didn't know it at the time that that was the thing that was taking me around a different corner with my health. I just know that, by me being upset with sugar and kind of sort of peacefully protesting and like looking at the labels and, saying I'm not going to have that because it has sugar in it, that I didn't know that that was going to be the thing, but it was the thing. My health started to turn around. Clarity started coming to me. Like it was crazy. I mean, because I don't know that I know having the knowledge of a nurse should have taken me on the path of health first, but it was history that really made me come around and look at it differently.
Wow. That's a. I'm kind of blown away with the perspective that you just presented in sharing this part of your story. I actually think it's quite fascinating because you go back to school
Mhm.
to pursue a degree in human rights and social justice, part of which was initially inspired by, you know, Trayvon Martin and similar incidents like that. And immediately, if you would have told somebody that, you would automatically be thinking, oh, yeah, she's going in there because she's trying to, again, get that academic grounding about these issues, and she's going to come out protesting the streets, fist in the air, ready to battle, whether it led you into being a civil rights activist, or whether it catapulted you into the political circles or anything like that to fight that stuff. And yet, in the midst of all of that, your focus ends up landing on sugar, and making the connection. And again, this is an example for our listeners. I want to understand that, this is a perfect example of how God moves. He'll take what seems to be completely on one end of the spectrum, and then make the connection with something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Because I would be willing to bet that if you asked 100 people if they would have ever made the connection of sugar to what your field of study was, they wouldn't have not have been able to make it. But I think it's relevant because if you think about the various challenges that we as a people have had to encounter in life, whether it be talking about slavery,
Hmm.
civil rights era, things of that nature, our ability to be able to withstand and endure and make it through those moments was not just about understanding the laws and the and the injustice and all of those things that's going on, but you got to be you got to have a certain level of personal internal strength and being on point to even be able to go to fight. Like I can't, in other words, I can't put up a fight
Sick.
if I'm sluggish. I
You're
can't put
right.
up a fight if I'm aching and hurting all over the
Mhm.
place.
That's
I
exactly right.
I can't take licks
That's right.
that are gonna come my way if my body is frail.
That's right.
All of those things are part of those struggles, but they
Mhm.
were necessary for you to be physically, emotionally, mentally prepared to endure. So when you talk about the impact of how sugar in many ways affects us, particularly us as black and brown people, because of the different things that we partake in eating and things of that
Right.
nature, it the light bulb in what you just said again, learning the connection. It's
Mhm.
like those moments, those fights, those storms are bigger than just the experience itself. You got to think deep. You got to go internal with this. And
Mhm.
even if the foods, if we look at it just strictly from a food perspective, even if the foods that we had to intake during those times of struggle, during those times of poverty, etc., were all we had at the time, you still have to it may have been what you needed to do to survive in the moment, but
Mhm.
ultimately you should be also thinking about how do I transition out of that into more healthier
That's right.
practices and mindsets. So in other words, I guess it comes down to, just because you started here doesn't mean that you got to end here, that there should be some growth, there should be some leveling up, there should be some connection that you say, okay, there's certain things we might have to do because this is all we got, but that doesn't mean that this has to be our identity forever. We
That's right.
just know how to pivot if it's necessary for us to pivot. That's why I've even had recent conversations with friends and family. Even when we think about the climate of the world right now,
Mhm.
and the
True.
political side of it and the things that are happening and all of that, and people are quite, honestly, they're nervous, they're frustrated, they don't know how all of this is going to turn out, and what happens if this goes away, what happens if that goes away. And one of the things that I, kind of one of those laughing but serious moments, I say, well, you know what, we as a people have been so accustomed to having to fight these type of challenges and battles that even though it would be unfortunate for some of this stuff to take place, honestly, we're gonna be all right because
We know how
we
to do
we
it.
already know how to take a little and make a lot out of it.
We sure do.
We already know how to
Sure do.
navigate, how to pivot, even when stuff is coming at us to where you're trying to snatch away this and take away that and put us in
Mhm.
this this condition where it looks like there's no way you're gonna get out of it, but somehow we seem to
Get
manage to get out of that. We
out of
seem
it.
to manage to work out of it. So if we can be creative, if we can be strategic in those moments, then why, when we find ourselves breaking free from those scenarios, why can't we do that same
Still
thing?
do it.
Still do that, use those same skill sets, but use it in a way that's positive and beneficial to us. And so, in this respect, as per your conversation that you're just having, you're talking about it from a health perspective. Then, yeah,
Hmm.
I might have not been able to afford, or I might not have had access to certain things, but if I do now, I need to shift. I need to pivot and
Hmm.
use those same smarts, but do it in a way that's going to help me stay stronger. That's going to help me have that clarity, that focus, eliminate that fog. So that as and taking it to another level from the divine perspective, from God perspective, He's saying, "I got a purpose for you. I got some work for you to do. I got some assignments for you to do, Sean.
Mm.
You This is not something that's going to be for the weak. This is not going to be something that you're going to be able to accomplish if you are sluggish and you can't move about or whatever. How are you going to connect with these people that I'm getting ready to put you in front of?
Mm.
Um, if the work that you got to do to prepare for just to have those talks, the special groups that you got set up, those opportunities, part of it is going through the struggle itself. That's what makes you relatable, because you shared earlier that there was a point in time that you were 55 pounds heavier than what you are today. So that makes your relatability part. But then it's still, I still got to be able to put in the work. I still got to be able to say the words and put them together and
Mhm.
express it in just the right way and just the right format so it reaches, so I get across the points that I need to get across, regardless of who it is that I'm speaking to. How do I make that? And part of that is, what are you doing on the inside? What are you doing in terms of your own personal self care? Because a lot of times people think about self care just from the standpoint of, your manicures and your pedicures and all of that and the massages, and all those things are great. We're not knocking those. But
Right.
sometimes we focus more on the outside, and we need to be focused on the inside, because
Mhm.
that's what's going to make the outside be able to hold up and be what it needs to be in those moments. So, again, I love the connection to what you studied, and then just you having the drive to dig more into, reaching out to people that spend time looking up this kind of stuff, and I'm glad that you had a chance to meet that gentleman that you spoke about, who, affirmed for you that this wasn't some wild goose chase that you were on, that you have a good work to do and you need to build on that. So, um, if nothing more, that also gave you a kind of solidified, a confidence in you that this is not just something I'm randomly doing. And as you stated, and I think it was important that you pointed that out, is if I'm going to do this at this stage in life, step away from my family, take myself away from them in whatever way that you normally are there for them, to chase this, because I'm sure, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure there may have even been conversations in your home like, are you sure this is what
You're gonna take a
where are you going
class
with this?
right again. Look.
What is this about? Like, is this one of those, what they say, midlife crisis, or you just bored? What are we doing here? You got
Yeah.
a good career, you're doing well. Isn't that enough?
Yeah.
But and this is where God reminds us that while careers are good and nothing, you serve in an awesome profession, a profession that we need people who look like you in.
Mhm.
But sometimes while we're chasing that career, and you've probably experienced, and I've even experienced it myself, you can be in a career, you can be doing very well in that career, but when you're not walking into purpose, there's always that
Mhm.
part that seems like it's missing. Something is not there. Something, there's a void. I love what I do. It's not that, but there's something that's just absent.
Mhm.
And and,
Mhm.
and it made me think, as you were talking, sharing this part of your story, I immediately also went back to the first part of when we started the broadcast, when you said, I thought I was going to be a teacher. I
Mhm.
never saw myself doing this. So it's like, again, you thinking that you wanted to be a teacher was not a mistake. You were always meant to be a teacher. It was
Mhm.
just that you had the background layer of it was going to be the nursing, the health and wellness piece of it. But you were always going to be a teacher. And
Wow.
so it's now you're kind of going full circle to doing the very thing that as a small child you spoke into
So that's
existence back then.
yeah.
Your official career title is nurse,
Yes.
but your divine purpose, the reason why you're here, is to teach, is
Mhm.
to educate. That's ultimately, and I can tell just even as you were sharing the story,
Wow.
that this is where you're actually feeling your greatest joy in that. Like, it's like,
True.
I love nursing, but when I get to teach, when I
Yes.
get to share, when I
Yeah.
get to pour in, it just feels different. It's not exhausting.
Yeah.
It's not, I never get tired of talking about it.
Mhm.
It's just a
Not at all.
natural thing that I love to do.
Mhm.
And if I could ever figure out a way to do that and somehow blend it into the career part of it, what would that look like? And,
Mm.
and and those moments can be very difficult for us, because oftentimes what God is really telling us in those moments is that, are you prepared? If I were to tell you that the way to go with this is that you had to leave that prosperous,
Mm.
prominent nursing career that you've been doing for 26 years, are you prepared to walk away from that and trust me to go down this path that I've been nudging you on?
Mhm.
Are you ready for that? And that's a hard sell, because you're like, what you mean? I've been in this thing for all this time. I'm supposed to
Not
just,
three times. God, look, come
like, look
on.
now. How do I have that conversation? what would happen if you came home and said, I decided I don't want to be a nurse anymore. I'm just gonna go out and teach and help people.
Mm.
Okay, you
Whoop.
know, but those are real things that happen, especially particularly for those of us who have that connection with God, and
Mm.
and you're trying to connect with that purpose. You're trying to walk in obedience as to how He's leading you, and so I
Mm.
can tell just even without you sharing that's probably been you probably had some of them conversations between you and God, like, okay, look, what we doing with this? You won't make this go away, and I keep thirsting for it.
Mhm.
But I got this career and it's comfortable here. I know what to expect here. I don't know what to expect over here, but I love over here. I just don't know what it looks like if I
Mm.
go all in. What
I don't
happens
know. I
then?
don't know how and why you all in my business. I don't know.
So I'm just
But you're
saying
so right. You're
it
so right.
that's a hard thing, but it's something that again, that you can't dismiss it. You can't, and I hope our listeners to understand, when you find yourself in those moments, don't dismiss that. It's a reason why it's happening. And again, we're not saying that it's easy to make those decisions, to go all in, to make that big leap, because it does require sacrificing. It does require letting go. Just even when you went back to school, there was some letting go that you had to do, and
Yes,
even
you're
in
right.
that couldn't have been easy, but you made a step, and God revealed to you what that step meant, the value in that step. But again, as you take those steps, then guess what? He's going to give you another step. Now that you trusted me with this, are you ready to trust me with this? How
Mhm.
about this?
Mhm.
Okay, how about this? And each time it gets a little bit more intense, a little bit more. I don't know. I want to, but I, I'm hesitant.
Yeah.
So again, I appreciate you sharing this, because these are real things that we deal with, and your story is very powerful, and I'm glad that the leaps that you've made so far, that you were bold enough in your faith to do, because it is all being revealed to you why, again, these things are happening. You're learning the connections. It's all coming together, and I don't think it's over. I think there's more to it, but yeah, this is definitely something that I love that you're sharing this, and there's nothing weird about it. There's nothing strange about it. This is a God move,
Mm.
and I'm glad to see you walking in it, and I would encourage you to continue to walk in it and see how what more he has to reveal, because I do believe that there is more to reveal, and that might even be a follow up podcast session where we talking about, oh, last time we talked, this is where I was at. Now check me out.
Now I'm
You
here
know, so
because you spoke
um,
it into existence.
this is beautiful. I love that. I love that. So Sean,
Mhm.
again, when we deal with our challenges of life, as we know, sometimes there are major leaps, major things that we don't really know how to process or deal with in the moment of time, and then sometimes life is just life, and then it's just the day to day nuances that we deal with. That said, when you do find yourself facing challenging moments, regardless of whatever level of intensity that might be, what is it that you personally like to do, that kind of that routine, that regiment that you like to follow, that kind of works best for you as you process in a healthy way dealing with challenging times in your life?
You know, I really love to reflect. And sometimes that is just sitting with the thing. If it's sadness, I feel like a lot of people will try to run away from their issues or suppress them or eat through them or um, work through them. And sometimes you just got to sit with it. If it's an issue, sometimes you just have to face yourself and see what it is that you've got to fix. I personally like to try to put a lot of the responsibility on me versus pointing on, this person did this and, that person did that. What did I have to do with it? And typically, when I can work through that, it helps me. Um, so reflection comes in through journaling for me, but also one of the best ways, and this is not uh, before Sugar Shun wouldn't have said this, but eating healthy food is really that thing that helps me,
Mm.
and that it fuels me, because what we don't realize with sugar is that it's really like creating injury on the inside of us. So it's increasing our cortisol levels, stress levels, and all of that, and messing up some hormones. And so some of my most unclear times is when I've just overindulged and done too much with sugar. So self care to me now looks like really just resting, getting away from the problem far away as I can. Sometimes you can take a day off from work, because if work is stressful, that's just what it is. It's stressful. I can get away from it. And then just trying to hydrate and nurture myself. There was a time when getting the hair done, the nails done, and all getting a massage, I thought that's what self care was, but it's not. I mean, those things really don't help um, as much as eating the right foods will, and just eating to get through another day, and also reflecting on your behavior and seeing, how does this really work? Have I been coping the wrong way? Have I not given somebody the right message? Have I not been communicating well? So I really like to like put the not so much the weight on me, but the responsibility on me, because once I do that, then I can make a decision and
Hmm.
pivot. Okay, I'm not going down that street again because I know what's on it. And so self care looks like just not going to repeat that same problem.
Love
Don't do it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting as you were sharing this part of your story, how you process during difficult times. I, I, I want, of course, I like the fact that you pointed out the importance of accountability,
Mm.
because it's very easy when we're going through challenging times in life to play the victim role, and if it's because of them, if they hadn't done this, so it's a systemic thing, or and not to say that they can't
Because
be
it
other
is.
people or things,
It
because
is,
there are
right?
some elements to that that is true. So I don't want to dismiss like it's not, because some people tend to just dismiss it altogether. No, there's some relevance to it,
It
but
sure is.
even if there is some relevance to it, there's always going to be a part of that moment where you have to do that self reflection, and you have to say, okay, what did I do, or what didn't I do
Mm-hmm. What
that
can I do about
perhaps got me in this situation? And
it?
so I think when you take the time to do that, you find out, and if you're honest with yourself, you find out, yeah, yeah, that was, I probably shouldn't have, said that thing, whatever I said that way, or I probably should have had a better attitude or approach about it, or, um, you know, I knew I was taking on way more than I should have,
Mm-hmm.
trying to fix myself,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
that's just not a way to go. And again, especially when we look at it from a godly perspective and say, God is standing here saying, I got you. I've been telling you I got you this whole time. You have evidence of that, of me
Mm-hmm.
having you. Why are you continue trying to step in my lane when all you have to do is hand this over to me and let me do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
So and again, this is one of those things, in time as you age and you learn, as I always say, kind of mimicking my mom, back in the day, you got to bump that head,
Mm-hmm.
and to figure out how to properly process stuff and not make a challenging situation worse than what it needed to be, or last longer than what it needed to last.
That's right.
Um, but the other thing that I thought was interesting that you said that you do, because of course I ask this question all the time, but you said something that I've never heard anybody talk about, which is from the self care perspective, when you said, I just, indulge in just trying to eat healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's like the complete opposite of what people typically do when they're facing a challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's easy, and just using the sugar as a subject matter in this moment, is think about the people who, when they're depressed or they're going through a challenge, they want to indulge maybe in a big old piece of cake, or even sugar that can be ingested in you through alcohol.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
I need a drink.
Mm-hmm.
But and if the situation that I'm dealing with is really tough, I might need multiple drinks, but not realizing the sugar intake, it's numbing me, it's making me feel relaxed, but I'm also, as you stated, not without even realizing it, I'm injuring my inside. I'm
That's right.
I'm damaging myself.
Hmm.
So for you to say I choose to, actually what makes me feel better is to just have a good meal, whatever that looks like, but one that is more on the healthy side, because what you realize at the end of having that, along with the other things that you do, journaling and things, and the accountability piece, you actually feel better. You actually have clarity. So now, this situation that I'm up against, this challenge that I'm facing, I now can look at it with a clearer focus, a clearer perspective, and on a heightened level, when you speak of it from a godly perspective, I now can hear from Him,
Hmm.
because as long as I'm all scattered and emotional and all over the place,
Hmm.
I can't hear nothing from God as far as what He's telling me to do. Don't go down this way. Check this out. Pivot this way, because I'm clouded. I'm distorted. I am, again, I'm filled up with the sugar.
Yeah.
Wherever that sugar is coming from, because I've overindulged in something. I'm igniting other sensories inside of me that again is in conflict with me being able to hear clearly what
Hmm.
it is that I need to do, for me having that focus that I need to have. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that that's something that we don't oftentimes, many times I would say, I would have never made the connection to say, maybe you should just try to eat something healthy. That might make you feel better, instead of you taking the
Yeah.
whole opposite way of thinking on that. So, um, and I want to kind of tap it, I follow up on a question with this.
Hmm.
Obviously your focus from a health perspective has been about the battle of the sugar, and how it hits us in so many ways, etc. If I'm somebody who, and I am somebody, but for our listeners as well, if we're somebody that when we're dealing with difficult times, and eating is a response to that, or just in general, struggling with the food intake because of just the day-to-day stresses of life, the job, the finances, and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
If somebody is looking to have a starting point, like,
Hmm.
where do I begin? Because there's so many quote unquote experts and gurus and all of that out there, and
Yeah.
if you just do this, if you just take this pill, if you just go this route or that route, from your perspective, where do people need to start to begin that health journey, in the whether it be directly, of course, the battle of the sugar, but
Hmm.
also just in being able to apply that concept just in day-to-day life. How do we adjust our diets? How do we adjust our ways of eating, and the impact of sugar in the process of that, to just get ourselves in a position where we're on the path of, again, healing ourselves on the inside, and getting our focus and our minds right with that.
I think it's pretty easy to give you some good starting tips, and I'll give you three. One is that the American Heart Association, they have set up guidelines for us, and it's guidelines based upon added sugar.
Hmm.
And so for a woman should not have any more than 25 grams of added sugar per day. And for a man, they shouldn't have any more than 36 grams of added sugar per day. That won't mean anything until you do rule number two, which is to read labels. And if you look at just a regular soda, most of the time a soda is going to have about 64 grams of added sugar. So starting there and just knowing, hey, I've got somewhere to start, some guidelines. A woman shouldn't have any more than 25, a man shouldn't have any more than 36. That helps. Now, me being a nurse, it's important for me to tell you that because the American Heart Association is the group that actually guides us on how to do chest compressions when we're doing CPR, ACLS when we're trying to save a life in somebody's coding in a hospital. So they're the ones who set those guidelines. They keep up with all the numbers, number of heart attacks, number of strokes, number of diabetes. They know our numbers better than we know them. So if they're telling us that we should keep added sugar to a limit, that's to me, that's like that's free. That's the cheat code. The third thing is making sure that you just stop high fructose corn syrup altogether. It's one of the worst sugars. It's highly addictive. For many people, it can build up into the liver, creating fatty liver disease. And once that happens, then some of the the byproduct can spill over into your bloodstream, creating sludgy blood. Some people would then look at that as a cholesterol number. But if you begin to clot, and if your that sludgy blood begins to clot and cake up, and if a clot breaks off and it goes to your brain, it's called a stroke. If a clot breaks off and it goes to your heart, it's called a heart attack. So those three things. One is having some limits on added sugar. That is huge. Once you make that change, you will start looking at sugar completely different. Two, reading your labels. And three, eliminating high fructose altogether. And why do I say eliminate high fructose corn syrup? Again, it's the most addictive. It creates a lot of problems that when you're checking your blood sugar, you're not picking up fructose, you're picking up glucose. So
Hmm.
it's creating a lot of problems inside of your body, a lot of injury that you don't know about. But the other thing is it's easy to swap. It's in ketchup. It's in almost everything, but you can also find the ketchup without it. So those are the three main tips I would give.
Okay, okay. That's good stuff because again, I know a lot of people, and including myself. You're trying to find ways to,
Mhm.
to switch it up and eat healthier, but at the same time, he's like, well, what is it out there that's healthy and it still tastes good, or
Mm,
or things of that nature? Because it used to be the issue used to be it costs too much to get this stuff. Then then you ran into a situation where I think there's more common now where again because of the lack of education about this stuff, it's like, well, if I'm not supposed to drink, let's say a pop, because of all the sugar in it, people may automatically shift and say, well, I'll get a diet version of it, not
mhm.
understanding that,
That could
or
be a
or
problem.
you look at the levels and you see what look like the diet is more sugary than so it's almost like a deception. Like if you automatically
Mhm.
think I'll get the diet of this, or I'll get if I go to a Whole Food type store or whatever, I'll get if I buy something from there, everything is healthy when it's not.
Mm-mm.
Like because there have been some times where the most expensive of a particular item wasn't necessarily the healthiest of the item,
That's
even
right.
though the name on the brand made it seem like whole this or
Organic
pure that or
all.
organic
Yep.
this, and
Yep.
and you're thinking, oh, this if it said organic, if it says whole, if it says pure, it
Mhm.
must be, and then you realize you compare it to something that looks it sometimes could be the generic brand, and you go, this is actually healthier than,
That's right.
and it's so it throws you off. So again, ultimately, what I'm hearing you say is that you just got to take the time to read it.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in the fancy packaging
Hmm.
or the store that you walked in, assuming that just because it's this name on the front of the store that everything in it is right. You have to take the time to read it and start from there to go through that process of trying to turn turn stuff around. And then I think the other part of it too is, when you start getting of a certain age, we get into our 40s and 50s and
Hmm.
up, sometimes people kind of feel like too that, and I've even had that question at times, wondering like, is it too late?
No.
Have you clogged up stuff too much, and have you heightened these levels too much to where
Mm,
the damage is irreversible kind of thing, and to again to what you're saying, no, it's not too late.
no.
So
No.
there's still an opportunity for you to turn that around. So
Because even you got to think about it. Even in the hospital, they have rehabs. You know what
hmm
I'm saying? Like they get you well to a point, then they send you to a rehab. So it's always something to work on. It's always something to work on. And I just think sugar is like the straight point. It's the straightest point. It's connected to so many diseases. We know if you overconsume sugar, there's a higher chance of developing high blood pressure, obesity, cholesterol issues, and of course, diabetes. They're all connected. So, the biggest thing is just if you need help, is just call and ask for help. Look me
right.
up. I'm here. Like I am
I might
here.
have to call you up.
You got it. You got my number. You got my number.
Yeah, yeah, because like I said, it's when you think about the history in your families, I
Mhm.
have diabetes in my family.
Mhm.
I've had the hardening of the arteries, and the strokes and the heart attacks. All the bad stuff is in my family history.
Mhm.
I've never personally experienced, well, minor, some of it, but not. I mean, I've never been diabetic or anything like that, but I have had cholesterol issues,
Mhm.
and of course, as you get older, and I'm not putting anybody's age out there. You and I, I'll just say, you and I are very close in age, and
Yeah.
so it's like,
It's
you,
gray hair showing
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. So when you get up and something that used to not hurt starts to hurt, or something
Mhm.
looks a little different than it looked, this time last year, it
Mhm.
again kind of, I automatically start having flashes of my mom or my grandmother, and
Mhm.
when they talked about similar stuff, and there's a part of you that kind of gets a little panic, like, oh my god, am I doing that? And then I look at my child, and my child just turned 18, and and you're thinking, you get older and you start thinking, I want to see them,
Yeah.
reach this accomplishment. I want to be there when she walks down the aisle. I want to know what it's like to be grandpa,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
start thinking, man, I gotta. So I say all that to say, and to my listeners as well, you have to be mindful that it's not just about you either.
That's
That there
right.
are people who expect you to be around, people
Mhm.
who mean a lot to you, like spouses, like children, like, close friends and such. And if you're not, taking care of yourself, and you're just being sort of reckless with it, which I've been guilty of that,
Mhm.
probably more so than I should be. There's a part when you have that accountability moment that we talked about, like, okay, are you really trying to be there? Do you really want to check out here earlier than what God, and God had plans for you to be around a whole lot longer, and God can still keep you around longer. But one of my biggest fears had always been, and it was the same with my mom. I'd love to grow old, but I don't want to grow old and be miserable because I'm sore and hurting and broke down and all of that either. I
Mhm.
want to be healthy and old.
Yes,
you
moving
know,
around. Yeah,
and
popping.
then
Yeah.
I still want to be able to, if I'm 70, 80, 90, I still want to be able to move about and do my thing. It just
Right.
be numerically I'm older, but not physically
Right. Yeah.
exceeding that. So again, to our listeners, these are things that are important for us to keep in mind. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. And like I said, we may have to have an opportunity to just specifically talk about just the health conversation altogether. So I don't want to get too far off into it, because it's a
Yeah.
whole nother. We could talk for hours on that.
Yeah.
This is about you in the moment in your story, but I appreciate you bringing those things up, and sharing just a little snippets of
Yeah.
some starting points that we can work from. So with that said, since we're talking about starting points, if you had the chance
Mm.
to speak to the younger version of you, younger Shun, the Shun before Shun got off into the sugar mode, and the Shun that was 55 pounds more, the Shun that was content with doing her career and living life as she's lived, but now you're in a new place, you're in a new mindset, you're looking at a new purpose, in a way that, like, you've never looked at it before. If you could share some insight to younger Shun, and pour into her some knowledge, some nuggets, if you will, that you think would have benefited her early on in life, in being able to navigate those challenging times in life, and making those hard decisions that there are to make, as well as our listeners, that people who are tuning in right now who may be going through some health issues, like you spoke about with the whole sugar thing, or just in general, just not knowing how to handle the pressure of life, and what to do. What would be your advisement to younger Shun, as well as to our listeners, in that regard?
I think if I could do that all over again, those times that my mom was taking me around to older people's homes, I would have asked them so many questions.
Hmm.
I would have asked so many questions, because I think back, a lot of them were living a lot longer than we live,
Hmm.
and we know that they had to go through things that were horrible, so I think I would have asked, them, how did they go through those hard times? What kind of advice do you have to go through a hard time? A lot of them had gardens. So I probably would have spent a lot of time in their gardens with them, learning how to grow things and cook at home, you know. Um, the other thing I think I would have told younger Shun is pay attention to your surroundings, not just so much the people, but like pay attention to the names of places. Well, okay, I'm from Tyler. Why is the name Tyler? You know,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm from Butler College. Why is that? Why is it named Butler College? Which I do know, but um, there's so much history in the names of things, and I think it's relevant history because, like with Sugarland, that's relevant history, and it's not by mistake that it's named Sugarland. So I think I just would have paid attention to those types of things, but I also think I probably would tell younger Shun to slow down because this part is going to go really fast. So slow it down. Um, Even if you work hard, that doesn't mean you're going to get as high up on the ladder that you think you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So find your purpose. That may be the greatest gift that you can have while you're here on earth. And I think myself would probably say, well, how do I do that? And I would be like, well, you need to think about what you're really good at. Like, and if we were to spin the globe and just drop you off in another place, another part of the world, what thing would you still really be good at?
Mm-hmm.
And that's your purpose. That's your purpose. So for me, it would be making connections and talking to people. It's funny that this is the name of the show because people who know me really well, I've always said that that's my purpose is to connect things, people, and to make connections. I've always said that since I found out what my connections were. So it blows my mind that that's the name of the show.
I love that. I love that, and everything that you said is so spot on. I mean, because again, you and I are close in age, so if you recall, coming up, it was like, and have had this conversation before. It's like when we were coming up, we were told that you want to do well in school, get good education, so you can get a good job and be able to, you know, live well in life, and so because that was kind of the messaging and our parents and our grandparents they meant well in instilling that into us, but it was more of a push to put us in position to have opportunities,
Mhm.
um, to live lives that were better than our parents and our grandparents, so we maybe didn't have to struggle the same way. And while the intention was good, I think what happened in the process was that we got so locked in on what career will provide us the greatest chance to make the big money and all of
Yep.
that, and it stemmed us away. It took us away from the purpose because, like yourself, even though I didn't grow up saying that I wanted to quote unquote be a teacher, it's what I like to do.
Mhm.
I've never taught in a school or anything like that, but in my work life, I've on numerous occasions throughout my career path, I've had opportunities to teach,
That's
to
right.
instruct, and I
Mhm.
love it.
Mhm.
And so it's like, how could you love doing something you love doing that? Why didn't you, when you had a chance to go to school, why didn't you decide to go be a teacher? Well,
Mhm.
the answer is easy because that wasn't the high paying job. And so I now have a child who, she's going, this is her last year of high school, and
Mhm.
career wise she wants to be a teacher, and I
Wow.
so admire that because
Yes.
she's doing something that she genuinely loves and has an interest in doing, and she's not concerned right now with how much money it pays.
Right.
um I wish I could have done that, that
Mhm.
I could have had that same mindset to pursue the passion first and worry about the money later,
Mhm.
because if you're doing what you love to do, combine that with the combine that with you having a relationship with Christ, He's
Mhm.
going to open up doors for you to walk in that purpose, and
Mhm.
you'll make the money. You'll
Yeah.
still make the money. In fact, you'll make more money than you would have going down that career path for a job that you may not even love, that you just tolerate because it pays well. But
Mhm.
every day you come home, you're stressed, you're worn out, you're tired, and then of course because of the money that you make purchases and investments and things. So then now you can't even walk away, or it's difficult for you to walk away from the profession
Okay.
because
Right.
you're tied to having to stay there out of the fear of losing the stuff that you got. But then that missing piece is, where's my happiness? Where's my joy? Where's my peace? If I don't have that, then does all this really matter?
That's right.
There's a lot of wealthy people in this world who are
Yes.
some of the most depressed, lonely people in the world.
That's right.
And you think to yourself, well, how could somebody who's a multimillionaire be depressed? Very easily. There's a ton of them.
That's true.
Some of them that we see on TV all the time, that we rave about their acting or their music or anything like that. But they are, when they're off the stages and alone in their own spaces, they are miserable, borderline suicidal in some
That's right.
instances.
You're right.
Is that really the life that you want to live? So again, I appreciate when you said earlier that, as I asked the question, it's not too late. It's not too late. You just have to take a moment to sit back,
Mm-hmm.
reflect, clear your head, and hear from God as to what am I supposed to do with this. I've
Mm.
been working, like you said. You also talked about that working hard. Thinking that would be something that you change. That don't feel like just because you work hard that that's going to guarantee anything. That you're going to get the big. There's a whole bunch of us who worked our butts off. Overtime, going
Yep.
over and beyond, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what was all that for? I'm not happy. Or I'm happy, but I'm not as happy as I feel like I could be.
That's right.
This is okay, but I want it to be phenomenal. I want to wake up every morning, and if I'm working, I want to wake up every morning excited
That's right.
to jump into what it is that I'm supposed to be jumping into, not, I gotta
Do this.
go in here and deal with this one and that one. And that's not, I don't believe that's how God intended for us to be. Yeah, we are intended to put in the work,
Mm-hmm.
but it's to work in the purpose. So it
Right.
don't feel like work. It's just, so it's those are the things that are key for us to take away from what you just said, as you were sharing what you would say to your younger self, and just again reminding our listeners that it's not too late, and that we need to just take these things that you're pointing out to us and have that moment of reflection. For some of us, we need to do it as soon as the episode is over. You just need to go sit down somewhere and just start to write some things down, start to really make some honest assessments, and then pray on that. If it's
Mm-hmm.
because some of it is going to be hard. Some of it is going to be hard, whether it's a job to let go, whether it's people in your life that you need to let go, that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of holding you back. Whatever those things are, whatever those distractions are, you have to be real about it and say, is this hindering me? Even down to the sugar. Is the sugar hindering me? Because
Mm-hmm.
that might be. And for many of us, while we might have been overlooking it, that could be like, as you said earlier, that could be a very big reason why we're not where we are, just because of what we put inside of us. Something as basic as sugar that we just think of as just this white powdery substance, having no idea that it's taking us out on so many levels. So it's just it's cool that this is the core of the conversation, that it's coming down to sugar, because when you really think about it, as you've opened our minds to think about it, it's like you got me looking at sugar different. I've heard all the different, the standard kind of run of the mill things that you expect to hear, but you gave us a perspective tonight that was a bit eye opening, and again, teaching us to make that connection, to learning the connection. So I'm glad about that, and I thank you for that. So,
You're welcome.
Sean, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on.
Too.
I'm so glad that we made a connection, and that you ultimately agreed come on the show, you probably were like, "Who is this guy reaching out to me? I don't know him."
Yes.
Um, but I'm thankful that you gave me a chance and checked me out. And was like, you know what? Yeah, I want to be a part of this. So
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
this was definitely supposed to happen, and I'm glad that it did. You blessed me. You blessed my listeners, and I'm so appreciative of that. So. Know that you have an open invite to come back on at any time. I would love to do that and have some follow up conversations, particularly on what the work that you do, because we need to have more of these conversations. Especially, I know your primary focus has been women, but there's some brothers out here who need to
I'd love
hear
to help the
this too.
brothers.
We need to hear it too, because we're oftentimes the ones that are checking out first and leaving wives and children behind and things like that, and all it. And there's just some minor things that we could be doing that could add years
That's
to
right.
our life and keep
That's
us
right.
lively and active and being a part of our family's lives. So I would love to have further conversations with you about that, both on and off
Yes.
this
Anytime.
platform. So that's good stuff. So but
Anytime.
as is customary here on the Blessings and Streets podcast, before I let you go, we do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. So if you got anything that's going on now or coming up down the road, please tell us all about it, how we can support, connect, be a part of those experiences, and just, if nothing more, keep you lifted up in prayer along the way. So what does Shun have going on that we need to be connected with and knowing about?
Wow. So the prayer, I love that. Thank you. Put me on that list. Put me on that list. Thank you for that. I do have a Facebook group called Sisters Breaking the Bonds of Sugar. Brothers, I do think about you all the time. And as a matter of fact, I did one of my first all male presentation a couple of months ago. And it was so exciting because I had a chance to not only talk to all males, but my first science teacher was there. And so I
Oh,
was just like,
wow.
oh my God. It was just, I had so much fun, so much fun. And it was so good because the history component really does connect really well with men, especially when we talk about convict leasing. So if you want to invite me to talk to your groups, men, I would love to do that. And like I said, it really is rooted in my why. Um, and it's just so strange. I'll try not to talk so much about that. But so Sisters Breaking the Bonds of Sugar Facebook group, women, please join. Feel free. I'm open to all women and our allies. So don't feel like you just have to be primarily a black and brown woman. Any woman can join. And then for those who like to reflect, I do have a reflection book. It's actually like a food tracker on not Facebook, I'm sorry, Amazon. So it's called Sugar Mode Off and it goes month by month. The January and the February editions are out, and it does have a place for you to track your food, track how much sugar you're taking in, track your mood about 15 minutes to 30 minutes after you eat, and then also there's a space where I've provided like some prompts for reflecting just on your food and or your experience for the day. Um, Find me on Instagram, and I'm gonna be a little bit more active on Instagram. I've been really active in the Sisters Breaking the Bonds of Sugar group. I have a retreat, my first retreat that's coming up in on January 13th through the 17th, and it's called the Feel Right Challenge. I mean, I'm sorry, retreat. And we're going down to McAllen, Texas. There's sugar history in McAllen, Texas, which is interesting. Most people won't know it. But every retreat that I have, I really try to make sure that there's some connection to history so that we can do some studying there. But also in February, I'm also doing that same retreat in Sugarland, Texas. So if anybody is interested in those retreats or the coming retreats, I'll start to post those so that we can know where we're going next. And let me see. If you want to get in touch with me, please, please, please feel free to email me at sugarmodeoff@gmail.com. I think that's it.
Hey, that's plenty. And again, thank you for sharing that for our listeners. She's told you how you can connect with her. Please take advantage of this. She's a wealth of information and clearly has a heart to pour into others, and really just trying to tackle that health issues that we have, and again, not just the physical aspect of it, but the mental, the emotional, even the spiritual. It all ties in together. So do support, do follow along, do keep up with her, join the groups that she has, take full part of that. And if you know of others that may not be tuned in to the episode, but you know that they can benefit from this, please pass that information along. This is a definitely valuable wealth of knowledge that she shared this evening. And again, it goes without saying how much we appreciate her presence and the work that you're doing. And I pray nothing but the blessings over your life and on all the works that God has for you that you're doing. I'm excited for what's in store for you, and just looking forward to the many uh, opportunities, the many creative moments that you're going to have, and focusing in on sugar and your projects and your workshops and your retreats and all of those great things. Again, I think you're just scratching the surface, and again, I'm fully excited and in support of all that you're doing, and we will definitely be staying in touch moving forward. So you're not gonna get rid of me that easy. So,
I'm with you.
um,
I'm with you. I got
and
you.
absolutely. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, if you've been blessed by our discussion tonight, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We want to encourage, inspire, uplift, being transparent and vulnerable, just raw and real with you, not putting on any facades, but just understanding the fact that we all deal with some type of challenges and storms in life, and we all can use some encouragement and ways of how to properly deal with these things in moments in time in a healthy and productive manner. But ultimately, what's most important is that you realize that you don't have to do this by yourself. And there's a God who loves us unconditionally. He wants to be in relationship with you. And if that's something that you don't currently have right now, I encourage you tonight. This will be a mighty fine time for you to make that decision.
You're right.
It'll be, and it will be the greatest decision that you will ever make. Not telling you something that we heard about. We're telling you something that we know from personal, firsthand experience. So he has plenty of love to go around for everybody. It's not just for a select few. If you want to be a part of that, he's willing and waiting for you with open arms, ready to receive you. And I promise, not only will he bestow upon you an abundance of blessings, but he also will equip you to be
Right.
a blessing to so many people, and help you to find that path, that direction, to make sure that you're walking in the purpose that he specifically created you to walk in. So everybody has it. You just have to tap in and get connected. And so he's here for you. Take full advantage of that. So that being said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is a place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight. Keep leaning into God, trusting Him, following His ways, following His paths that He's setting forth for you. Operate in that obedience. Quit trying to do it your way, because we have a tendency to mess it up. And we try to do it our way, or we try to modify what He has set up for us. He's perfect in every form, fashion, mode, or method that He has for you. Take hold of that, grab hold tight, don't let it go, and just watch Him do magnificent things in your life. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your evening.